Hello again. Remember the book? I want to tell you about Johnny the bully. He was this bigger kid who lived on my street, and he beat up everybody in the neighborhood and was a real thug, especially me, because I was the shortest kid around, and so I was an easy target. He went to the same school, and he beat me up on the playground and chased me around and hit me. Well, things came to a head one day as I was walking home, passing the vacant lot where I had discovered the weeds that had the seed pods that were the super cheese that I ate so I could be Buddy Mouse and fly through the air. That lot. Well, the city had come and plowed up the weeds, and so the ground was all bumpy and lumpy. And at the end of the lot, I saw something white on the ground by a big rock that was there, and I walked over, because I'd never been in the lot before. I walked over to see what it was. I picked it up. It was a skull, a human skull, with big empty sockets for the eyes and the nose, the teeth hanging down, and a little chip out of the back, like somebody had maybe hit it on the head to chip out the skull. And I was so excited. I said, my own skull, I found it. I'm going to take it home and put a candle in it because it was almost Halloween. And I said, I'll put it on the porch, and it's better than all those people who put carved pumpkins with candles because nobody else had a skull. And they'd all come and line up to look at my skull with a candle, and I'd be the hero of the neighborhood. And so I was ready to take it home when I turned around and Johnny was there. He'd followed me into the lot. And he said, what you got there? And he snatched my skull. Oh, I was ready to fight him for my skull, and he could see that. So he threw it as hard as he could, way to the other end of the field, and it hit against the rock, chipped it a little bit. I think it fell down. And he and I glowered at each other like a face-off in a movie where like a Western, the gunfighters are going to see who pulls the gun first. And we backed out of the yard, out of the lot, and down the street, and up and off to our street where we turned off, and Johnny went on his way to his house, which was about 3 houses further down on the left. And I ran down my driveway over the neighbor's back fence and ran to the vacant lot, and the skull was gone. Now, I think I was too little and young to figure out what probably happened. Like maybe the neighbor in the house next to the vacant lot had been watching out the window and saw these 2 kids arguing over the skull they had buried there and thought it was safe until the city plowed up the ground. And then the kids left, and so the neighbor came out, grabbed the skull, and took it to hide it in a better place so they wouldn't go to prison. Well, I didn't know any of that to think it through, just that Johnny had stolen my skull and I lost it and he ruined Halloween and he needed to be paid back. Well, we had oleanders in the yard and somebody said, watch out, kids, oleanders are poisoned. I said, are they? So I invited Johnny over and said, Johnny, let's play a new game that I made up. Now, nobody invited him ever anywhere because everybody knew him and he bullied the whole neighborhood and everybody hated him. But he came over and I said, that bush over there, chew on a branch. So he did. He went over and he chewed and slobbed, and there was green drool dripping off his chin. And I said, chew some more, swallow. The game's not over yet. And he did some more, and then he said, I was waiting for him to fall over, because, oleander. But he didn't, and he said, this game is boring. I'm going home. So he left. I watched him leave. Didn't fall over. Well, that close. I just missed it. But I had another chance. There was a kid on the other side of the street across who lived in a big yard, about 3 houses worth, and like a farm, and it had a barn, and all the older neighborhood kids would get in the barn like a club, doing whatever older kids do in clubs. And my best friend, Jimmy, who lived over the wall in the next house from mine, would come over and we'd play, but he was a year older, and he was part of that sort of gang club, and he invited me. And he said, come on over. Sort of, you'll be ready to join the gang in maybe a year or so, and you should see what your future is like. And this was the time they invited Johnny over. Now, Johnny was happy to come because nobody invited him ever for anything. And he said, "What you doing?" And they said, "We're drinking tomato juice. You want some?" And he said, yeah. So they had this big tall glass that they had filled with kerosene up to the top, about a half an inch left, and they put a little bit of tomato juice on it to disguise it, and they gave him the glass, and he took a little sip, and they said, "How is it?" They expected him to fall over. And he said, "It's okay." And he drank about half of it. And we watched and we waited. He didn't fall over. And he drank the whole glass down to the bottom, all of it. And he refused to die and fall over. And he said, "You got any more?" And they got nervous. They said, no, that was the last of it. And he said, "Okay, I'm going home." And he walked out, went home, and we waited for him to fall over. And he didn't. Now, it got complicated as he got older, and there were rumors of him in gangs and drugs. And I thought, well, maybe partly my fault that I didn't do what I could to sort of be welcoming, like a good neighbor, to say, let's get together and be nice and play games, because I want to be nice to everybody. That's what I think. We should all get along. And I thought, maybe I could have done more, and maybe that's why now I try to do more, and I try to get everybody happy together, and Johnny is just a memory. So that's Johnny the Bully. Bye for now. See you next time.